Good morning, my name is Chris Fox, and today we're talking about superfans, pissing them off, and what we as authors can learn from what's happening with Disney Star Wars. So of late, we've seen a bunch of major IPs make some mistakes with the fan base, and those fan bases have gotten really, really angry. Game of Thrones leaps to mind, and Star Wars. I've heard a lot of Bond people getting upset, Ghostbusters, Terminator, there's a whole bunch of franchises out there where people are getting angry. And a lot of mainstream media outlets are very confused as to why these fan bases are so upset. And so today I want to explain to you from the perspective of a super fan of a given franchise why people are upset. So you guys can see how the mind of a super fan works. And hopefully what you're going to take away from this is, man, you guys spend way too much time thinking about this stuff. And that's good. That's good. I want that to be your takeaway, because your understanding of superfan should be this. A superfan loves your work so much, like if they read your novels and they love the world that you've created, that they want to spend time there afterwards. They want to live there. They want to spend every waking moment they can there if possible. They want to expand on that universe. They want to understand better what is contained there. And the best way I guess I can illustrate this for me is to explain how I immersed myself in Star Wars. And I hope there's like a little rolling dollar sign in your head as you're listening to this. Okay, so my earliest memory, I was probably 2, maybe had just hit 3. So I guess that would be, 1979? I was born in 76. 1979, Empire Strikes Back had just come out. And my brother and I were at a drive-in. And apparently we'd seen the movie before. It wasn't new, but it had been out for a while. And it was still selling out. And so we had to actually get tickets for another movie and sit on the bumper and watch this movie. And my brother knew the movie so well already because we'd seen it that he kind of gave me the dialogue and the sound effects as we watched it on the bumper. And that guy's literally is my earliest memory, sitting on a bumper in Southern California watching Empire Strikes Back at a drive-in. And Star Wars has run counterpoint for my life since then. I read almost all of the novels, and that includes, the 1979 Splinter of a Mind's Eye, all the way on up through some of the more modern stuff. I read the X-Wing series, I read the Republic Commando series, I read the Jedi Academy series. There were tons and tons of novels and comic books that were released. I loved Star Wars. I loved the concept of a lightsaber, but most importantly, I loved that the Jedi protected the people that they loved. The Jedi were the heroes trying to safeguard their friends and family. And the Jedi stood for justice. They would protect those people who couldn't protect themselves. This was very important to me. And so developmentally, as I was growing up, these were my archetypal mythological heroes. And as an author, it's critical that you understand just how important myth is. And I've got other videos on the topic already, and I'll have more that I'll post in the near future. But myth is powerful. It is integral to the human psyche and to our development as a species. It is really, really important. I cannot understate how important I feel myth is. As a professional storyteller, having done this now for many, many years, this is the root of what we're doing here and influencing the people around us. We're all kind of touching at this mythic symbology, at least in my genre. I mean, I can't speak for everything. But this has been my experience. And so people who read my genre, people who are interested in Star Wars, they need that mythological itch scratched. And nothing in my lifetime has scratched that itch like Star Wars. And it's important for you to remember, in ancient human history, so we're talking ancient Greece, ancient Rome, there weren't tons and tons and tons of stories. There was the Iliad. There was the Odyssey. There wasn't much to choose from because all they really did is preserve their most important archetypal tales. And the only archetypal tale that has emerged in my lifetime, and I was fortunate enough that it happened at a very young age in my childhood, is Star Wars. So what I think a lot of people don't understand is that Star Wars has become a religion, very much so a religion. And it's tied to the early identities of millions and millions of Americans, because we loved it. We fell in love with the universe and we wanted to stay, like I mentioned, with superfans. So that drive didn't stop with books. It's continued into the new millennium and grown and developed. And my Star Wars religion, if you will, has flourished. We've learned new rules and new powers. They came out with a series of video games. There was Knights of the Old Republic and then Knights of the Old Republic 2, and there was Star Wars Galaxies, and then, more recently, Star Wars The Old Republic. So if you're familiar with games like World of Warcraft, there's equivalent for Star Wars with some of the most amazing cinematographic storytelling I've ever seen in my life. I played these games for the story. They're so good, and they deepen the Star Wars lore. I've spent literally, and God, it kills me to say this, thousands of hours playing these games over my lifetime. And I've spent so much time in the Star Wars universe. And so where am I going with all this? What's the point? What's the takeaway for you as an author? Anger your super fans at your peril. If you slight these fans, they will turn on you and they will do it vehemently. And all of a sudden, this thing that they loved, they'll hate. And how this happens is when you have a non-super fan creating content for this intellectual property. That's exactly what happened with Game of Thrones. That is exactly what is happening with Star Wars. And I'm not going to argue the specific story merits of either of those properties or talk about, the problems that I personally see or may have had with happened there with what happened with those respective show and or movies. But the takeaway, for me at least, is they took somebody who didn't really understand a property and put them in charge of making content for it, which is setting them up to fail. In the case of Star Wars, your directors were J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson. And both of these people are quite honest that they're not Star Wars fans in the sense that I'm a Star Wars fan. So if you ask me, am I a Harry Potter fan? I'll say yes. I love the movies. I've read the books. But I'm not a Harry Potter fan in the same way that I'm a Star Wars fan. I haven't spent thousands of hours in Harry Potter. And let's be clear, lots of people do. Lots of people have written fan fiction and they've memorized all the spells and they've expanded on the language and the history and the lore because they want to live in this world. Harry Potter superfans are rabid about everything from the type of wand that various characters are using, to the sexual orientation of certain characters. I mean, it is very important to them in the same way Star Wars is to me. So I can recognize, because I am passionate about a specific fandom, that normies don't understand that I'm a normie in the Harry Potter franchise. I don't get it like these people do. Like, I have fun at the movie, but then I forget about it and I don't spend the next 12 hours thinking about Harry Potter and what house would I be in and what my character name be and what type of wand would I use and what spells would I learn first. I'm not thinking about that stuff. But I do think about it with Star Wars. I ran a West End Games role-playing game. So this is very similar to Dungeons & Dragons. And my buddies and I would get together every Saturday to play. And I ran a game for 2 years. That's almost 100 sessions. I probably missed a few, but at 8 hours a pop, guys. 100 sessions, 8 hours a pop. 8,000 hours playing that single campaign where, we had a bounty hunter where these characters were playing the same people for the whole time. So they really developed into rich characters. And in our head, Star Wars as a universe grew, and it grew in importance. So the problem that, Doctor Who and Game of Thrones and, The Wheel of Time will soon face and, Harry Potter and every other franchise faces out there is your super fans have built a world in their heads. And if you challenge that world in ways that they find unacceptable, they're going to get very upset. So if you look at the primary problems with The Last Jedi, it's that the solutions that were introduced and the way in which Rey learned her powers are not consistent with the canon that they've created. So we know everything about how Jedi and how Sith are trained. And basically what they're doing is breaking the rules. And they're not breaking the rules because, they've got some clever thing at the other end. They're breaking the rules because they're unaware of the rules, because the people that are making the new Star Wars movies haven't spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours playing these games and in the Star Wars universe in their own heads. Dave Filoni certainly has. So there are people that are now making content like The Mandalorian that are super fans. And it's interesting because if you look at the reception to The Mandalorian versus the reception to, say, The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker, which is just now coming out, you can see a marked difference because Star Wars fans recognize, this show honors the universe. It honors what we know about it. It takes the rules into account, whereas the new trilogy of movies just runs roughshod over them. And it's unaware of the rules that you're breaking. And if you're not a Star Wars fan, you're not going to care that we're upset about how force healing might be used. You're not going to care necessarily about the breaking of Luke's character arc, the fact that the most archetypal mythological hero of my lifetime that has inspired countless kids, to be greater than they are and to try harder and to do better and to grow up, like it's helped us grow into adults. The character assassination that's happened there, it doesn't matter to a non-super fan because you're like, oh, that was clever. I didn't expect that. That was a good movie. And then you walk out and you go on your way and you never look at The Last Jedi again. But for us, I've spent more time in Star Wars than most people have spent, with their real religion. And you've just assassinated, the Messiah equivalent. And so fans react badly. We react very badly. As you can attest, if you look at the reviews on The Last Jedi on any platform, Rotten Tomatoes through Amazon, through, iTunes, be careful about slighting your fan base. So I understand this is a long, rambly video, and lots of people are very touchy about Star Wars or Game of Thrones or other properties that have slighted. If you're a fan of those properties, please, before you hit that dislike button, before you make whatever comment you want to make in the comments, please take a step back and think about this rationally from a marketing perspective. My channel is all about being a sustainable author who tells stories, and you cannot do that if you alienate your fan base. You can't do it. And I remember when this happened with The Last Jedi, and I put out a video about that, I did upset some authors because people were fans of the movie, and they were like, Chris, I can't believe that you're saying this. And there were even words like misogynist used, which was very upsetting to me. I think that, maybe take a big step back and divorce yourself from the issue, like in the same way I have, because I'm a very passionate Star Wars fan, but I'm not looking at it like, Disney made a terrible movie. I'm looking at it like Disney made a movie that's not hitting the core needs, the emotional resonance that those super fans were seeking. And in my opinion, the super fans were the most valuable part of Disney's audience. I've spent, $5,000 in my life on Star Wars. When Galaxy's Edge, that's their new theme park, opened, their numbers were very disappointing. Their opening day numbers in the first few weeks, because people aren't coming to the park in droves like they were expecting. And the reason for that's very straightforward. The parks are all about the new movies. There's none of that. You're not going to find, Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia from the original Star Wars wandering around. You're not going to see them. And so if you are a fan of the original movies, if you are that super fan, there's nothing to entice you there. And that to me shows a myopic lack of sense of awareness, where Disney, and this just floors me because Disney doesn't make mistakes very often, understands their fan base so little that they managed to screw up Star Wars. A $4 billion bet. Same deal with Game of Thrones, where they phoned it in during the last season. If you were a non-super fan, if you haven't read those books like 5 times like I have, then you're probably not terribly upset. But if you are, who was the Night King? Like, who was he? Why was he coming south? Why did he wait until now? Why was he sleeping? What did he want? Like, none of these things were answered. And as a super fan, where you've spent 20 years filling in gaps in your head and trying to understand this universe in a better way, like, the same way I study ancient Egypt as an amateur Egyptologist, I know Middle Earth. I've read the Silmarillion. Like, we do the same thing for fictional worlds that we do for the real world. And in our head, there's no separation. We treat it just as importantly. That's why people get so upset about the fandoms that we love. And as an author, you can see the passion in me, I'm sure. Be careful when you are working with these properties. And I'm not saying don't make your own stories. Like, obviously, you've got to make your own choices and be true to yourself as an author. But ignore your fan base at your peril, especially the super fans. I've pissed mine off a few times. I've made some mistakes, and I've definitely seen the price. Like, you'll see engagement in a series drop when you cross one of those lines. You will literally cost yourself money if you're breaking those rules. And that comes back to the conventions of a genre. If you're writing romance and an alien bursts through the wall and kills the heroine, what kind of reviews are you going to get on Amazon? They're going to be terrible because, again, people have expectations, and you have to understand what audience you're trying to make happy and where that money comes. My last dig at Star Wars, something like 70% of revenue for Star Wars traditionally has come from merchandising. It's not from the movies. The movies are great. They make some money. It's from the merchandising. It's from the toys. It's from the video games. It's from the Legos. And they've just tanked since the new movies came out. All sales across the board have just tanked, and they're not coming back. And I can tell you why. Disney disavowed the expanded universe. So all those novels that you heard me mention in the first part of the video that I love, like the Grand Admiral Thrawn trilogy, all that stuff, gone, wiped away. What Disney has told us is all that stuff that you sank your childhood into doesn't matter to us. We're not going to use that. We're only going to use the new stuff, and the new stuff is bad. from a storytelling perspective, having an exactly identical Nazi-esque regime rise up in the wake of the empire, resetting the stage in exactly the same way. I mean, I'm not going to turn this into a bash Star Wars video. You guys can see the video that I posted, and you'll see another one about Rise of Skywalker in the near future talking about that. But this one, I don't want to focus so much on bashing Star Wars because, Disney made some mistakes, but hopefully they'll learn from them, and hopefully they can produce content that will keep my segment of the audience happy. And if they can't, then they get to see what happens, and that's a loss of revenue. Or if you alienate your fan base, lots of them never come back. So guys, that's kind of the lesson that we can learn from the Disney Star Wars debacle. If you don't believe it's a debacle financially, I would encourage you to spend 5 minutes on Google and start looking some stuff up, because Disney's been losing money hand over fist on everything from Galaxy's Edge, to the movies themselves. Solo, the movie Solo that came after The Last Jedi, the only one they've released to date, lost money. Like, they've never had a Star Wars movie lose money before. And I wager most of the people in the audience who, are casual Star Wars fans that don't understand why people are upset, have you seen Solo? Because most of the people that I talk to who like The Last Jedi haven't even seen Solo. Like, they don't even watch all the Star Wars movies that come out. You've got to remember, super fans are different. So if there's an area in your life that you are a super fan, you've got a huge advantage, because all you've got to do is apply that to everything else when examining it. Think about the way I think about Star Wars, and then when I see somebody who's upset about Harry Potter, all I have to do is say, okay, they've spent the same amount of time in Harry Potter that I've spent in Star Wars. So anyway, guys, this is a little rant for me, a little holiday rant. Hopefully you enjoyed it and it was useful in some way. If it's not, don't be shy about hitting the downvote there. If you don't like the video, if you're not happy with the content that's being provided, then show that. That's fine. But if you do like it, if you like that I'm talking about this stuff and I'm covering movies and fandom and things in that way that I think are important lessons for us as storytellers, let me know. I mean, that's how I know what content to put out. I'm not doing as many videos as I used to. I want to do videos that are useful when I do videos. So, let me know. Anyway, guys, I do need to get back to the writing. It's the middle of the holidays, and I'm going to have a son very shortly. So, got to finish that one more book before he's born. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.